where new airports, highways, and seaports were promised. Where visions of creating the Dubai and Singapore of the future were shown. But today, in many of these countries, these mega projects remain unfinished, and dreams lie broken. Some are buried under debt, while others stand as abandoned ruins. This was China's largest global mega project, named the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. Once hailed as the project of the century, it is now considered a geopolitical disaster, causing the most harm to poor nations who were shown these grand dreams. But what exactly went wrong? Why is a superpower like China being criticized? Welcome to our channel for an in-depth look. The beginning of BRI in 2013, China's President Xi Jinping announced the Belt and Road Initiative, BRI. It was described as the biggest plan of the century. Create a modern Silk Road connecting Asia, Africa, and Europe through railways, highways, and ports. China's mission was to bring developing nations onto the path of development and present itself as a global leader. The vision stunned the world. Over 140 countries expressed interest, and many poorer nations immediately began borrowing from China. Before long, China invested $1.2 trillion into the project. But these loans were given to countries deemed too risky by Western banks or the IMF. The hidden agenda soon, the real nature of BRI became clear. It was not just an infrastructure project, it was also China's geopolitical and economic strategy. China's industrial capacity had grown massively. Millions of engineers were graduating each year, but there weren't enough domestic jobs. The solution? Export labor and expertise, while increasing China's geopolitical influence. Loan money to poorer countries for BRI projects, and use Chinese companies and workers to execute them, benefiting China economically and politically. Debt trap diplomacy. The biggest problem, debt trap diplomacy. China gave loans so large that countries could not repay them. If the loans went unpaid, China could seize land or critical infrastructure. Example: Sri Lanka leaders were promised a new deep sea port on the Indian Ocean, aiming to create a regional trade hub like Dubai. Sri Lanka already had Colombo Port, but it was mainly a transshipment hub where large vessels unloaded containers to smaller ships. China tempted Sri Lanka with a new deep water port on the Malacca to Suez shipping route, named Hambantota Port. When Sri Lanka borrowed $3 billion from China, the conditions were strict. Only Chinese firms could construct the port. Interest rates were low, but if the loan wasn't repaid, China could take control of the project. Construction was completed, but the port never became operational. Feasibility studies showed the port wasn't actually needed, and in a year, only 30 to 40 ships stopped there. By 2017, Sri Lanka had to lease the port to a Chinese company for 99 years. Now, all revenue goes to China, and Sri Lanka lost a portion of its sovereignty. Other nations caught in the trap. Sri Lanka was not alone. Zambia, dependent on copper exports, borrowed heavily from China. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic halted trade and tourism, and copper demand fell, leading Zambia to default. By 2020, 43% of Zambia's total debt was owed to China. Montenegro, a small European country, borrowed $1 billion in 2014 to build the Bar-Bulgar highway. Poor planning meant that after heavy mountain excavation, only 41 kilometers of road was completed. The project consumed nearly all funds, shaking Montenegro's economy. Montenegro's debt rose to over 80% of GDP, forcing it to seek IMF and EU assistance. Sri Lanka also built Matala Rajapaksa International Airport with Chinese loans. Today, it's called the world's emptiest airport, with very few flights, and sometimes elephants roam the runway. Ecuador partnered with China to build the Coca-Codo-Sinclair Dam for $2.6 billion. During construction, Chinese contractors ignored quality standards, bribery occurred, and the dam now has over 17,000 cracks, posing a potential environmental disaster. Pakistan and CPEC. Then came Pakistan and the China-Pakistan Economic Corridor, CPEC. The $60 billion project promised electricity, jobs, and development. Many projects were delayed or failed. Protests erupted in Gwadar against the Chinese government due to water, electricity shortages, and unfulfilled job promises. Now, the Gwadar port is largely under Chinese control. 91% of revenue goes to China, and only 9% remains with Pakistan. Failures in Europe. Italy joined BRI under a Memorandum of Understanding, MO, but later exited, calling it a big mistake. Other countries like Malaysia, Myanmar, Bangladesh, and Nepal also cancelled or renegotiated BRI projects. Global response. The failures prompted the US and Europe to launch alternative initiatives. PGII, Partnership for Global Infrastructure and Investment, Europe's Global Gateway Program. These initiatives promise transparent loans and low interest rates, avoiding the pitfalls of debt trap diplomacy. Meanwhile, China-Russia relations strengthened. After isolation post-Ukraine war, Russia leaned on China through BRI, creating a new geopolitical axis challenging U.S. dominance. The true cost of BRI. After 10 years and trillions of dollars, BRI is considered modern history's largest foreign policy failure. BRI was never truly for global development, but to export China's industrial capacity, access raw materials, increase geopolitical influence. Most loans were in Chinese yuan, promoting China's currency globally. Yet, China gained direct or indirect stakes in over 100 ports worldwide, benefiting its export economy. If completed, BRI would connect Asia to Europe, covering 65% of the world's population. BRI 2.0. The future now. China is rebranding the initiative as BRI 2.0, focusing on digital infrastructure, green energy, sustainable projects. However, nations are now cautious. They will only accept projects that offer real economic benefits, not just debt burdens. Did China benefit? China did not fully achieve its goals. The BRI slowed its own economy, earned the label of debt trap diplomacy, and brought liabilities for incomplete projects. However, its control over strategic assets and ports worldwide remains a major advantage for China's export economy. Conclusion. BRI taught the world a harsh lesson. Mega development promises can mask geopolitical agendas. Debt trap diplomacy has burdened nations, yet China retains control of key global assets. The future of BRI depends on sustainability, transparency, and mutual benefit. If you found this story insightful, like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more videos on global politics, economics, and mega projects.